The government situation is quite different in Singapore, and the government seems quite engaged with BCA and Greenmark. What's the difference that you see between Singapore and Australia?
I think the green movement, it's actually needs the government's participation as well as the public participation. It's not just one-sided. I think the government has to put in the kind of incentives in order for the general public to move in the same direction. And on the other hand, I think the people have to realize that it benefits them. And quite often in homes, earlier we mentioned that in homes, how do we incentivize people to save energy, to save water? Because it brings their bills down. And that will help them actually drive the whole movement forward. Because it benefits each household. It's not just a gross movement across the country. The homes themselves have to feel that I'm saving money, my bills are coming down. So I think it's an effort where the individual dwellings as well as the government has to play a part. The government can come in with incentive schemes, but there's a limit to how much incentives the government can levy on.
And Bruce, you've got a very different government structure and challenges that you're facing. How do you help? Do they help or hinder?
Well, you know, I think our real challenge was to establish credibility with the government. So the government has brought in well on sort of Green Star. There are quite a lot of government buildings that have got Green Star ratings at all different levels of government. But it was that sort of real engagement with government that we were after, the sort of advocacy. And there was definitely a sense amongst government of saying, well, you know, this is a kind of a Western concept. You know, Western countries are fine, they've sort of met all their needs, and now they're telling us that we must reduce energy. And I think through some of the projects we're doing, through the social and economic group, we're starting to establish our credibility where we actually are starting to get into real negotiations with government. The Cato Manor project was a great one. It was kind of the gift that keeps on giving because it keeps getting awards. And just when we think we've kind of wrapped it and finished it, we get another grant and we have to do some more houses and we get some more awards, and it just keeps on rolling. But it's established a really good level of credibility for us with our government. So so we are starting to engage on a much deeper level, and they're certainly not hindering.
There's been a question that it could have been planted by Peter Vua or someone from ASBEC, the Australian Sustainable Built Environment Council, because we had this discussion yesterday. It could be David Parkin. So I'll read the question. Green embodies a certain ideology. Have green building councils considered a name change to embrace wider audiences, or will this issue simply fade away in time? Jane, and then Bruce, and then Paul.
I think one of the things that we've been discussing lately is how do we translate the impact that we make to something that people understand. I think, you know, that this conversation we're having here about moving towards something that's more about people and profit, this touches on this question as well. So if I'm having a conversation with the taxi driver who's bringing me to a conference like this, what do you tell him? You know, how does what we're doing in here today make a difference to his life? And that's the type of conversation that's a little bit hard to have right now because it's a little bit, what we do is a bit technical, and it's a little bit hard to say, look, the impact we make on the challenges that the world faces today is, look, we help save energy, we help reduce carbon emissions, we help make better cities, and we're going to, you know, create these great cities that we envisage that Kent showed us this morning with these fantastic new technologies. And so having some, you know, much clearer language that everyday people understand is definitely where we need to move to. And I think there's a trend around the world that, yes, probably green is a little bit limiting, but what should replace it? I don't know that sustainability is the right word. I think that's probably a bit confusing. So, you know, if we're having a conversation with the taxi driver, that's my kind of test. If we're going to move to something else, is it going to work with them? What's your view?
Well, I smiled when I saw the question come up. It's a question that gets thrown at me fairly regularly in the UK, and my normal response is, well, The reason our full name is the Green Building Council, but increasingly we call ourselves the GBC, is because one day we will just seamlessly move into becoming the Good Building Council when nobody's looking, and move on silently from there. But aside from that kind of slightly throwaway comment, I think you have to be wary. The danger in the broadening out of this agenda to embrace the social, to look at this through the lens of people, is that you risk trading off too much in terms of the environmental. There's a guy called John Elkington who coined the phrase the triple bottom line way back in 1994. And one of the arguments I've had with him over the years is that does it make it all too easy to trade off? People will show you around their portfolio. They'll show you their wonderful environmental exemplar project. They'll show you their wonderful people, social-oriented project. The danger is, as I say, they have these little cherry-picked examples, and what you haven't got is a real commitment to all of these things running through every project. The reality is that we are facing environmental limits. And technology may help us, and we may find a smart and closed-loop way of using our resources, but we are facing environmental limits. And so for now, we cannot afford to reduce the attention on green.
There's one question, and then I'm just going to ask the panel for a final statement, which I'm going to answer. I'm going to beg the panel's forgiveness for doing this. The question is the World Green Building Council making any effort to equate the rating tools, the rating scales of various countries' certification schemes? So that's around, obviously, having one common method of rating systems around the world. We've tried to do that over a number of years, and that is very complicated to do for a number of reasons. Some rating systems are based on governments. Some rating systems use different metrics. Trying to get rating systems to talk to each other is quite a challenging thing. The conversation, though, can be had around equivalency, and there is being work done by the World Green Building Council Ratings Tools Task Group that I used to chair, but now Singapore Green Building Council chairs, and there is a specific project in looking at how rating tools can equate to each other, and there we're looking at equivalency. But it'll be interesting to see if we ever get to a stage where we have common language across the rating tools, just like the fact that when you travel between different countries, you've got to take different power sockets. So final question to the panel, we've only got a minute to finish, is really very quickly and succinctly, where do you see the Green Building Council movement going? Actually, you can, I'll start at the other end, you can finish. Eng.
Yes. I think the Green Building movement, I think it's here to stay. It's not going to disappear in tomorrow or what. I think it's important to know that various different countries have different issues with the Green Building movement. And it's different in different countries. Same like when just now we mentioned about the green rating tool. It has to be different because the emphasis in each country is different. And as we progress through the years, the green rating tool or the ratings has to go up. And you know that it changes. It has to improve. That's why it's important that all of us realize that we are here to strive to work for the long term, the future. Thank you.
Bruce.
Look, I mean, I think that, as a civilization, we're kind of facing environmental limits. We've exceeded them. And I think the first phase in dealing with that is the kind of technical solutions that we have through rating tools. But as we progress, it's really more about behavior change because the scale at which we have to operate is just so massive. It really has to be about creating a kind of a movement that moves towards a tipping point. So I would see the movement sort of going far more on the sort of behavioral and social change side.
Paul.
I think the next big step is going to be a phase of radical collaboration. I think things are happening very, very fast. Jane talked about the project looking at health, wellbeing and productivity. That's co-sponsored by Lend-Lease and Skanska. 2 years ago, they wouldn't have dreamt working on a project like that together. And the biggest lessons are going to come through radical collaboration.
Jane.
I think another trend we'll see, and I think I've heard it a couple of times already today, is that we don't have sustainability as separate within businesses, it becomes integrated. I know that quite a few companies these days have removed sustainability teams and people are within the normal structures of business, not separation of sustainability. And I think that will help really drive things forward and integrate it into everyday practice rather than being an add-on.
Thank you. Please join with me in thanking my great friends and colleagues, Eng, Bruce, Paul and Jane. Thank you.